Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head back over to America once again, and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. Now, these guys are another relatively new addition to their local beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves over the last few years, and it seems that this brewery is best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. But if you look into it, they have done quite a few different styles that have gone down quite well. We reviewed one of those beers on the channel as well, and I was pretty impressed with it. So maybe it is fair to say that this brewery is pretty damn solid all round, and I'd be curious to try more different styles from this brewery as well. But the beer that we're going to have a look at from them today is the second of three that I picked up from their latest drop here in Hong Kong. It's a style that I have had from this brewery before, one that I know they can do very well, and this one I've heard very, very good things about. So needless to say, I'm very, very curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, like I said, we are going to head over to America. We're going to go to New York State in the northeastern part of the country. We're going a little bit to the northwest of New York City to the Hudson Valley region, and we are going to go to the little town of Warwick, and that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from the wonderful Drowned Lands Brewery. So this particular beer is called Swell. It comes in at 8.5% ABV, and it's another New England hazy imperial double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this one is actually the strongest of the three that I picked up during the latest Drowned Lands drop here in Hong Kong, and this one seemed to get a really good reception actually. It's got a hop bill in it that I'm quite excited about, Mosaic and Citra, which we know very well, and Enigma, which is an Australian hop that I encountered a couple of years ago and really loved, but I haven't seen it in quite some time, and that was one of my main reasons for picking up all three of the Drowned Lands IPAs that I saw this time. So yeah, this one I think should be really good. So yeah, the Swell, 8.5% ABV, New England hazy imperial double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from the Drowned Lands Brewery in Warwick, Hudson Valley, New York State, over in the US. So let's crack on with this one then and see what this beer is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from the Drowned Lands Brewery before, and we will definitely add more to that list in the near future. We've got one more can to look at from them, then I'm sure they'll appear again in the next few months. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the American playlist along with a number of other things, and that's being added to very regularly, of course, because we do get a very good selection of American craft beers here in Hong Kong. But do make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days, even if I do say so myself. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about the Drowned Lands Brewery once again then. So, Drowned Lands Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in the little town of Warwick in New York State, which is to the northwest of New York City, and this is the Hudson Valley region, which is supposed to be very, very pretty. But the company was founded back in 2020 by Mike Cry, who has a background in accountancy and audit. He's originally from Hawthorne, a little bit further south in New Jersey, where he still lives today, but he studied business in Michigan before returning home after working in that field for a number of years. But he was also an avid home brewer, and apparently encouraged by his father-in-law to turn pro because he really liked his beers. But interestingly, he also owns Pine Island Brewing, which can be found nearby in Pine Island, which is north to the west of Warwick, and this company was actually founded back in 2015. And the brewery is based in an old fire station and operates a small 2.5 US barrel system, which is about 400 litres, so it's more of a brew pub rather than anything else. But one of the beers that was created at that brewery was a saison using local candy onions and this one was called the Drowned Land Saison, and this beer apparently was the one that inspired the name of the new brewery when they went to form a bigger company. So the Drowned Lands Brewery is based in the former Mid-Orange prison facility, which has been gradually converted into a business park since 2014. The brewery building is over 100 years old, and it once belonged to the State School for Boys before serving as the administration building for the prison complex, and apparently they invested about $2.7 million in getting this brewery off the ground, and it started off with a 1,500 US barrel per year capacity, which is around 240,000 litres for those of us that use the correct metric system. So yeah, I'm always going to make fun for the way Americans measure things, because to me it just makes no sense. But yeah, 240,000 litres of beer per year was the output of this brewery in the beginning, but I believe that's been scaled up quite a little bit over the last few years. But the name of this brewery is taken from the local fertile grounds, which are a result of the ancient glacial lake and the flooding Wallkill River. But for this reason, these guys are quite focused on using local ingredients as much as possible, and they call this the philosophy of terroir, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But yeah, they use a lot of locally produced grains and things like that, so their beers are pretty unique in that regard. They're also known particularly for fermenting their beers in wooden fodders as opposed to stainless steel, which takes a little bit longer, but gives their beer much more in terms of unique flavours and things like that. And they've got a lot of house yeast strains too. So yeah, these New England IPAs that you get from Drowned Lands are pretty different to the ones that you're going to find from a number of the other craft breweries in that particular region of the States. But like I said, over the last few years, these guys have built up a very good reputation for themselves, particularly with the New England Hazy IPA category. And as of November 2025, these guys have produced 240 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, that is everything I can really tell you about the Drowned Lands Brewery for the moment. A very rough history of these guys, of course. But if you want to learn more, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's go on then and have a wee look at this beer itself. So yeah, I can breathe now. We've finished the brewery history section. So yeah, that's usually the bit that I mess up in these videos. But yeah, as you can see, the artwork on this one is pretty similar to what we've seen from Drowned Lands Brewery before. The last beer we reviewed from these guys was, of course, the Autumn Terra, which was really quite nice, but a little bit more bitter, if I remember correctly, compared with some of the other ones we'd had from this brewery before. But yeah, plain silver top on the can there. You can see this Drowned Land symbol on the side, which I think is pretty cool. And yeah, usually on this side of the can, they tell you the hop profile and things like that too. But yeah, this one is a 473 milliliter can, in other words, 16 fluid ounces, or 1 American pint, North American pint, whatever you want to say. But yeah, like I said earlier, 8.5% ABV this one. It's hopped with Mosaic, Enigma and Citra. Mosaic and Citra are of course both American, both 14% alpha acid. Mosaic's going to give you that little distinctive earthiness in its green component and a lovely kind of oily tangerine character. Citra in a New England IPA is going to give you a very lovely juicy mango sort of character and also a little touch of lemon and lime. Whereas Enigma, I think when I had Enigma it was mostly in West Coast IPAs, but Enigma is of course Australian. It's about 16% alpha acid. It reminded me quite a little bit of like Nelson Sauvin. It had that very kind of gooseberry, white green grapey sort of character to it, but it also gave a little bit of a kind of red curranty character too. So not a million miles away from Strata, but yeah, a little bit more grapey, I would say, than Melanie, as you would get with Strata. So yeah, interesting hop bill, as I say, my first encounter that I know of with Enigma in quite a wee while, and that was the main reason behind getting this one in addition to the other two actually. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass then and see what it's all about. Very, very curious about this one, as I said. So this one's got a wee bit of foam jumping out of the can at me, but we'll get it out into the glass then and see what we have. So there we are. That looks pretty damn nice, I have to say. So we've maybe got about 50% of the beer out and into the glass at the moment then. And yeah, can see this one is pretty nice looking. Yeah, so before the head disappears, we can see that this beer poured with about a third finger of a frothy I would say perfect white head there, some medium-sized bubbles sticking on the surface of the liquid there, and a few little ones. Mostly kind of medium-sized bubbles on the surface of the liquid there actually. But yeah, when you go further up the head, you can see they are just that little bit soapier. But yeah, the head has faded away very, very quickly in this one to just leave a kind of thin, wispy layer on top. And then yeah, you've got that ring sitting around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass for this one. Some visible carbonation coming up toward the surface of the beer there. But yeah, all in all, this one, it looks pretty much as you would expect of any New England Hazy IPA. Now for me, I would describe this one as being like quite a rich mango juice yellow colour. I think it looks very, very nice. The colour of this one, I would say, yeah, I think it's a wee bit paler than that. Maybe a mix of pineapple and mango juice, but I always like comparing the appearance of New England IPAs to different fruit juices because that really is just what they remind me of in all honesty. But remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil is going to play a role because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. And yeah, that's, you know, those latter two variables aren't that common to care about when it comes to New England Hazy IPAs or the wider IPA style umbrella, if we can put it that way. So yeah, most of the colour on this one will be coming from the different malts that are in it. But in terms of the level of haziness in this one, it's not the soupiest and gloopiest of New Englands that I've come across in recent times, but it is pretty much in line with what you'd expect of the drowned land beers that I've seen before. So remember, the level of haziness in these beers depends on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use. That can vary from beer to beer and brewery to brewery and so on. But yeah, this one looks pretty good. As I say, not the soupiest and gloopiest that I've seen, but yeah, everything about the appearance of this beer is in keeping with what we would expect of a New England Hazy IPA of any description. So yeah, I don't think we really need to say anything more about the appearance of this one. Let's go on and actually have a little look at the aroma of this beer then, and you can often get some very interesting things from the aromas of these beers. So let's do it. Ooh, right. Now, this one's quite interesting. This smells quite different from the last one that we had from this brewery actually. Now, it's giving you everything you'd want. That lovely big kind of bready backbone, lot of juicy fruity character, nice bright green component. As I say, everything that you would want from this beer style is in there. But yeah, the backbone of this beer then, or I should say, when it comes to your New England IPAs, there's maybe 6 elements to think about when it comes to the malty and yeasty side of these beers. So yeah, you've got the farmhousey yeasty type character and the rye leaning grainy side of things. Those two elements are a little bit more common in the New England brewed New England IPAs because this style really started off as the farmhouse IPA rather than anything else. But as the style has moved elsewhere and evolved, you're focusing a little bit more on wheaty bitiness, oaty creaminess, barley malt bread, and also the sweeter side of things. So for me, this one, its malty character really leans a bit more toward the nice kind of barley malty sort of notes. So that get quite a lot of barley malt out of this one, but there is a wee bit of oaty creaminess in there and also a little touch of wheaty bitiness. But I would say more barley malt and oat in this one rather than anything else. But yeah, let's just break down the aroma of this one and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth before we taste the beer. So yeah, backbone of this one, you've got some lovely fresh white bready bread crust in there. So yeah, fresh white bready bread crust in there, a little bit of wood, a little bit of cracker, and the way that all of that goes together is pretty nice. You always get these little bits of backbone in the beer. But yeah, for me, there's a little touch of a wholemeal brown bready sort of thing with this one. So yeah, a little touch of wholemeal brown bread in there, but for the most part, the malty backbone of this beer is a lovely, fresh, fluffy white bread in there. So yeah, lovely fresh white bready character in there from the barley malt. You can smell a slightly denser, wheaty white bread coming out of this one as well. It's a little bit bitier further back in the nose, but very, very smooth further forward. and then on top of that, you start to get the more oaty side of the beer. One thing I will say though is that the more I smell of this beer, the more the wheaty character kind of pushes its way out of this one. And for me as a European, it's quite interesting to see these characteristics in the beer, because I always find that American wheat or North American wheat is very, very smooth, whereas European wheated malt is a little bit more kind of bitey and things. Could be down to the grain or just the malting process itself. I'm not 100% sure. But I also noticed that North American oats are a little bit more sort of porridgey, whereas European oats are that little bit creamier. So yeah, there's interesting wee nuances in a lot of these beers. But yeah, the wheaty character in this one is definitely there, and it comes out more and more the more you smell of the beer. In terms of the oaty side of things, for me, it's quite interesting because you can smell the oats are quite creamy, but it's just showing you a little touch of dryness. And oats are a very interesting part of New England IPAs because very often they can give you a rough indicator of how fresh your beer actually is. So essentially, the creamier the oats smell and taste, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older the beer is. And this one, like I said, is pretty damn fresh. So you can smell that nice oaty character coming out of this one. Very smooth, slightly creamy, and then you've got a little bit of you've got a little bit of wheaty. You've got a little bit of sweet character coming out of this one, I should say. So yeah, there's a wee bit of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type note coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, little touch of that, but not overly much actually. This beer smells more bready and wheaty rather than anything else, and there is just a little touch of that McVitie's digestive biscuit coming out of the beer too. So yeah, the way that everything pieces together in this beer is really very, very nice. Yeah, I think that covers everything we need to say about the malty side of the beer. So nothing particularly surprised about this, but yeah, definitely a more oaty and barley malt leaning New England IPA, this one, which, like I said, isn't overly surprising. But the last one we had was a little bit more kind of yeasty, I thought, and had a wee bit more bitterness to it. But yeah, we'll see. But yeah, let's look at the yeasty part of the aroma then. So for me, the yeasty character always really comes out in the back of the nose. So yeah, this one, if you take the aroma in a bit more deeply, there's a little bit more kind of sweet wholemeal brown bread to it. You've also got that fluffier white bready character as well. And it's got a wee bit more of a kind of crackery, sort of farmhousey white bready note to it also. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together in this one is quite nice, and it just gives the malty character that little bit more dryness, could we say. So yeah, all in all, the way this one goes together, I think, is really quite nice. So yeah, that gets a big thumbs up from me. Yeah, let's leave it at that for the malty and yeasty side of things. I think it goes together really nicely. Let's go on to the hoppy part of the beer then. So as I've mentioned in many an IPA review before, there are three types of hoppings that you have when it comes to brewing an IPA. You've got early addition hopping, which takes place within the first hour or so of the wort boil. That gives you a very deep and dank green component, and it's responsible for the vast majority of your bitterness. You've got late addition hopping, which takes place within the latter half hour or so of your wort boil. Little bit of bitterness, mainly flavour aroma, and it gives you a very bright green component. Then you've got dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete. That's all about flavour and aroma, and it gives you a very kind of bright green component, and yeah, very, very, well, pretty much no bitterness. So when it comes to New England IPAs, they rely mainly on late addition and dry hopping, which is why they're kind of softer and more juicy, if you like. And then West Coast IPAs use all three types of hopping, which is why they're more oily, bitter, and deep and dank and things like that. So yeah, you can definitely smell with this beer, it's got quite a little bit of late addition and dry hopping, because the green component isn't overly pungent, but it's quite nice and smooth actually, which makes me think there's potentially a little bit of cryo in this one, and I think it's most likely to be the Citra and the Mosaic that will be cryo in this one. I'm not sure if I've ever seen actually Enigma cryo from Australia before, but still, yeah, the aroma in the green component of this one is really nice. So let's just look at that first. So you can definitely pick out that there's a little tiny bit of earthiness in there, which will be your Mosaic, as I said earlier. But mostly, it's a nice little bit of floral aromaticity. But to be honest, I think the biggest part of the green component in this one is that kind of wet, leafy, sort of grassy character. So yeah, the green component on this one, there's not too much to report with it, but it does add a nice dimension to the beer, we can safely say that. So let's round off our look at the aroma with the fruity side of things. So yeah, fruity side of this beer is very, very nice. I think the Enigma is actually potentially the most pungent of the hops in this. I'm getting a lot of that kind of white, green, grapey, gooseberry, Nelson Sauvin-esque type stuff coming out of this one. So yeah, certainly getting a lot of the gooseberry kind of character to it. And if you take the aroma in a little bit more deeply, I can get the juicy sort of mango and apricot-y, passion fruity things that I would expect of Citra. And I think in the top of the nose, I'm getting a wee bit of the tangerine orange. But yeah, I think for me, the aroma of the Enigma really is coming out in this one. There's that lovely sort of candied strawberry, like red curranty kind of thing coming out of this one. But I think if you gave me this beer blind, I'd potentially guess that it was Citra, Mosaic and Nelson Sauvin. That red strawberry kind of red curranty kind of character that's coming out of it is quite subtle, but I'm guessing that the reason it's a bit more prominent is potentially because they've probably used T90 pellets with that, whereas the other two might be cryo. And I think cryo aromas, they tend to mix a little bit more and kind of blend together, whereas at least if you've got one hop that's T90 pellets, it tends to be a little bit more sort of pungent and things. But again, with the cryo oils, the flavors can potentially be a little bit more intense. It's essentially chemical extraction of the flavor parts of the hop flower, if you like. That's kind of what these cryo products tend to be. But yeah, aroma wise, the fruity side of this one is very, very nice. And as I always say, just take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. So yeah, let's have a wee look at this one then and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one should be very nice. The River Swell, an 8.5% New England Hazy, Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA. Citra, Mosaic and Enigma in it from the Drowned Lands Brewery in Warwick, Hudson Valley, New York State, over in the US. Let's get stuck into this one. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, again, that's a really nice, smooth, just drinkable New England IPA, this one. It's the interesting thing is a number of these beers are dangerously drinkable when it comes to their ABVs, and this one at 8.5%, yeah, this is very, very easy to drink. Yeah. It's really nice though, I have to say that about it. It's definitely, what I was saying about it being more oaty and more barley malt leaning, I think that's pretty much true in this one, although in fairness, into the aftertaste, I think you are getting a wee bit more of the wheaty side of the beer. But yeah, I think based on what I picked out with the aromas, I think this is one of these beers where the aroma and the flavour pretty much agree with each other. So quite pleased with that. My nose obviously does work. But yeah, really nice New England IPA from these guys once again. So let's just go through it and break down the flavour and describe that for you a wee bit more in depth, as we always do. So yeah, backbone of this beer then, we'll go to the middle third of your palate. You've got a lovely little bit of a kind of fresh white bready bread crust in there. So that forms the backbone of your beer. As you move further forward on that middle third of your palate, yeah, you get a little touch of woody character out of it. There's a kind of smattering of like Jacob's cream cracker to this one. And yeah, those flavours kind of linger there into the aftertaste. So you do have a good little bit of dryness just coming out of this beer, which is really quite nice. Sitting on top of that, you get a layer of like a wholemeal brown bready sort of character coming out of the beer as well. So yeah, that wholemeal brown bready character kind of lingers in there too. And then sitting on top of that, you've actually got a very airy, fluffy white bready note coming out of this one. It's almost crisp in a way, which makes me wonder if they've used a wee bit of Pilsner malt in this beer. And that's, you know, in fairness, that's one thing I would say about this. I feel that with this one, it could just do, it's got a lovely flavour profile to it, but it could just do with a slightly heavier body in a sense. To me, this one is actually feels quite light in terms of bodies. And yeah, for me that can be pinpointed to that fluffy white bready layer there in the middle of your palate that's just got that almost Pilsner malty type crispness to it. It's really quite interesting in that sense. I don't think I've ever had an 8.5% New England double that's quite as light and crisp as that in the malt base there. So yeah, sitting on top of that, so above that fluffier white bready note, there's almost like a wee bit of a, as I say, that there's like a crisp Pilsner malty type layer coming out of this one. It doesn't feel quite German right enough. It does feel as if it might be more kind of American in a way, because the American Pilsner malts, they just don't quite taste the same as the Czech ones or the German ones. There's just a wee bit of difference to them. It's almost like they've got a very slightly higher acidity or something like that. So yeah, you've got this, on top of that fluffier white bready layer that I was talking about, you do have this almost Pilsner malty type crispness in there, but just, as I say, slightly more zippy than what you'd get from the European counterparts. And then the next layer up, you've got a more dense, wheaty, white bready character in there. And yeah, as I said, North American wheat tends to be very, very smooth. And so yeah, and generally speaking, smoother and sweeter flavours come out further forward on the palate, whereas more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So within that wheaty white bready layer, you can feel that the more dense wheaty white bready character is smoother further forward, and it's a little bit more kind of bitey and zippy further back. So yeah, as I say, bready bread crust, a little bit of wood, a little bit of cracker, wholemeal brown bread, a fluffy kind of crisp and fresh barley malt white bread, and they're almost a Pilsner malty layer, then the more dense wheaty white bready layer, and then above that, you've got a more oaty sort of creamy type character coming out of this beer. So let's focus on that oaty creamy side of things. And one thing I will say is, if you actually, in fairness, if you hold the beer on your palate a little bit, you do feel like it's got a little bit more thickness to it, and you get a wee bit more of the oaty character in this one. So maybe we'll need to see how that oaty side of things builds with this beer the further that we go. But yeah, on top of the wheaty white bready character, down the middle line of your palate there, you can feel that nice kind of creamy oaty sort of note coming out of the beer. And as you move out toward the edges of your palate, it's just got a little bit more of a, there's a little touch of like oaty dryness to it, and in the dead centre of your tongue there's that little circle there where you've got a bit of Werther's original butter candy butterscotch, and it's just surrounded a wee bit by, it's surrounded a little bit by sort of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So yeah, the way that all of that pieces together, I think, is really quite nice. So yeah, all in all, the way that pieces together is pretty interesting. So yeah, the sweeter side of this beer, it does come out a little bit more into the aftertaste, but yeah, you can feel that oaty dryness in there on the sides, and then a wee bit more kind of creaminess into the aftertaste as well. So yeah, the middle third of your palate in this beer, I think, is really quite nice. I think that's everything we really need to say about it, in all honesty. Let's go to the back third of your palate. As I've often said, the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, but just that different intensities, if you like. So yeah, the border reaching between middle and back third of your palate, you get that nice little bit of bready build up in there. You can feel the wholemeal brown bready character in the base, the fluffier kind of white bread from the barley malt in the middle, and then you've got the more bitey, wheaty white bread sitting on top of that. And as I say, I just get a little bit of an almost Pilsner malty crispness out of this one, which is quite interesting. But yeah, if you go to the back third of your palate, you can feel the white bready bread crust is there in the base of the beer. On top of that, you've got the Jacob's cream crackery sort of notes. Then yeah, you've got the wholemeal brown bready layer, which was a little bit lighter, taller, more airy and dry. You can say the same about the white bready barley malt layer, which sits on top of that, a little bit lighter, more airy and more dry. Then yeah, you've got the more dense wheaty white bready character coming out of this one as well, which has got a wee bit more sort of bitiness and things to it as well. So yeah, that kind of lingers into the aftertaste a wee bit, and you can feel a little touch of the drier side of the oaty character just kind of creeping over the top of that. So yeah, all in all, the way that goes together is pretty nice. Then above everything else, you've got the more yeasty side of the beer coming out. So let's have a little look at the yeasty character in this one and see how we go. So yeah, yeasty side of the beer then, for me, it's, yeah, for me, I would say the yeasty side of this beer, at its core, it's got a more kind of wholemeal brown bready sort of character to it, and it's a little bit sweet actually, so yeah, more dense wholemeal brown bready sort of core coming out of this one. And then yeah, as you move further out from that, it's got a little bit more of a kind of white bready, like a crisp white bready kind of character, not quite as crisp as the Pilsner malty note that I was picking up earlier on, but then yeah, you've got a little bit more of that, yeah, you've got a little bit more of a kind of white bready bread crust around the very edge of your palate there, or around the very edge of that yeasty character there, and that just lingers into the aftertaste. So you do have a wee bit of dryness out of the yeasty character into the aftertaste there too, and yet back third of your palate you can feel the flavour. It's just that little bit taller. Then as you go into the middle third of your palate, it just kind of compresses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really nice in this one. So yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about the malty and yeasty side of things. The only other thing I would say is that, yeah, maybe in the dead centre of your palate, yeah, you get that little circle there, Werther's Original Butter Candy Butterscotch and a wee bit of biscuit, of course. But yeah, I do feel that that Werther's Original note comes out a wee bit more into the aftertaste, and the kind of biscuity notes mix in with that almost Pilsner malty crispness too. So yeah, it's interesting just how the malty character in this beer goes together. But yeah, let's go to the hoppy side of things then. So yeah, in the back corners of the palate, you do get a little bit of earthiness in there, which is going to be your mosaic. So you can definitely feel that in there. As you move further forward, it's a little touch more woody and kind of herbal, and then pushing further forward from that, it kind of quite quickly converts to be a more sort of floral aromatic type thing that comes out of this one. So yeah, the way that all of that goes together is quite nice. But then round the front curve of your tongue, you can feel the beer is just that little bit lighter, more grassy and more kind of zesty, if you like. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is really quite nice as well. So yeah, it's pretty nice stuff, I have to say. And I do wonder, I think there maybe has been a little bit of cryo used in this one, but not too much, in all honesty. I think there are T90 pellets in this as well, because you do get a wee touch of lingering bitterness there into the aftertaste. But yeah, let's round off the tasting section of the video with a look at the front third of your palate. So yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get that little bit of bready build up in there. You've got the brown bread in the base, the barley malt white bread in the middle, then the more dense wheaty white bready character on the top. But then yeah, the base of the front third of your palate, white bready bread crust, Jacob's cream cracker, wholemeal brown bread, barley malt white bread, the more dense wheaty white bready character, which incidentally is very, very smooth on the front third of your palate, and then just a wee bit of the oaty character just creeping forward there as well. Then on top of that, you've got that lovely oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just kind of roll their way out of the beer. So let's have a little look at that fruity side of things then, just to round off. So yeah, fruity side of this beer for me is really, really quite nice. Yeah, I think it's kind of, if you know these hops, it's kind of what you would expect, in all honesty. If you go to the back half of that front third of your palate, there's a little bit of like a kind of peachy sharpness just kind of on top there, which is quite nice, and maybe there's a little touch of a kind of more slightly bitter, like grapefruity character at the very back of that front third of your tongue, and those notes will come from the citra. But underneath that, you've got that kind of trademark big juicy mango-y character in there. There's a wee bit of passion fruit underneath, and yeah, as you move further forward toward the middle of that front third of your palate, apricot and a bit of pineapple on top. So all that tropical fruity character in the back half of the front third of your tongue. So I wouldn't be surprised if citra, just going on the basis of how kind of pungent those elements are in this beer, I wouldn't be surprised if citra has been used as the early edition, the whirlpool hop in this case. That wouldn't surprise me with this one. But yeah, if you move further into the front half of that front third of your tongue, you can definitely get underneath that more kind of white, green, grapey, gooseberry type note from the Enigma. That is quite present in this one. And then sitting on top of that, you get the kind of big tangerine orangey characters of the Mosaic. So yeah, those two notes are coming out of this one. And the orangey, I actually find the tangerine orange of the Mosaic kind of really lingers there with this beer. So that's pretty interesting. So yeah, into the aftertaste as well, you can definitely feel a little bit of the kind of red curranty type character coming out of this one. And again, that's one of the products of the Enigma. So when you first take the beer in, of course, like I say, it's the more intense tangerine orangey characters, and those do linger there for quite a wee while. But then yeah, you've got that softer kind of, as I say, you've got a little bit more of that more oily, yeah, you've got more of that candy strawberry sort of thing, candy strawberry red curranty character coming out of the beer into the aftertaste, and yeah, just that bit of zesty orange kind of lingering behind it too. So yeah, all in all, the way everything goes together in this one, I think, is really nice, and it gets a thumbs up from me. But like I say, I think this beer just needs a little touch more kind of body to it in a sense. But I do think they've maybe used a bit of Pilsner malt in this, which is crisping it up and maybe giving that impression. So on that note, let's move on to the mouthfeel section of the video. So yeah, for me, this beer, I would say it's kind of top end of mid-bodied. Carbonation is quite smooth in it. The beer does have a little bit of a silky mouthfeel to it, but like I say, further back on the palate, it's actually quite crisp and quite dry. I do heavily suspect there's a bit of like Pilsner malt in here, or something like that. It could also be a little touch of acidulated malt, you never know, because to an extent, the aftertaste of this one reminds me of the old Magic Rock Cannonball IPAs actually. So throwing that out there, those beers from England, it does have a little bit of that to it, so maybe a little bit of acidulated malt is another option that's in this. But yeah, the hoppy side of this one, as I say, there's a little bit of bitterness to this. I think it's maybe about 40-ish IBUs at the most, somewhere between 30 and 40. You do get a little bit of lingering bitterness there as well. The malt base is a wee bit drier underneath, smoother in the middle, slightly creamy on top, and there's just a little tiny touch of sweetness to it. But yeah, mostly the malty character in this one is quite dry and quite smooth, and then you've got a lovely juicy, fruity character to the beer as well, which yeah, it does get a little bit more zesty into the aftertaste too. So all in all, quite an interesting beer, this one, and definitely nice to come across Enigma once again. So very good beer, but I do think just a little touch heavier on the body with this one would be quite nice. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the River Swell, an 8.5% New England Hazy Imperial Double, whatever you want to call it, IPA from the Drowned Lands Brewery in Warwick, Hudson Valley region, New York State, over in the northeastern US. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Drowned Lands Brewery as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But in the meantime, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in another review very, very soon. Ciao just now.